I'd like to go through a few rules. Curfew is at 10 p.m. sharp. No smoking or drinking. No pants.
What?
Oh, you don't think dreams can die? Let's find out.
Night he met Mom. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Stop helping!
Awesome clips. Welcome everyone to an all new episode of TV Dinners. So much to talk about tonight. Our topic is coming soon. And there are a lot of shows on the fall, winter, rest of 2022 roster, and I hope that some of them are exciting for people to hear about. There were a bunch that I didn't even know were happening. So I'm really excited about some of these myself. I want to take a real quick minute and talk about something that is in entertainment news right now. And I feel like it's important to talk about simply because this really affects content, both the kind of content that we're talking about on TV Dinners and the kind of content that we were just talking about over at the movie Potluck. HBO, which has been in the news lately because of a merger. HBO Max and Discovery Plus are merging basically into one single digital service over the summer of 2023. What's happening with that and the background to it is kind of bizarre. So everyone was expecting that Warner Brothers, which is a huge, absolutely enormous umbrella of content production, including the DC universe right now, everyone was pretty sure that they were going to post slightly smaller earnings than normal, or that they had projected. And sure enough, they did. But it was small. They just sort of missed their mark. Now, when I say that they just sort of missed their mark, we are talking about a. I'm trying to come up with a good word. I get kind of speechless when I'm talking about this stuff. We're talking about a small hit out of their content budget. One of the things that I'm sure everyone knows is that mergers are sort of the big thing right now, right? There are so many mergers, it's difficult to tell what content platforms have what. But HBO Max is pretty unique in the sense that it really does globally encompass a lot. Things that are like not just the Warner Brothers sort of family of entertainment, but also Turner Classic. And with this merger with Discovery Plus, what they're trying to do is consolidate the brand to, I guess, make things a little bit more uniform. Now, one of the really interesting things that has happened out of this is there is a big debate. If you watch this on Twitter, a big debate about what content really is and whether there is a difference between scripted content and unscripted content. And when I say unscripted content, I mean the reality show. There's the Fixer Upper House kind of reality shows. There's the Big Brother reality shows. There's the Tropical Island. There's the Survivor kind. There's the Alone whole franchise, which is now kicking off. All of those pieces are I mean, I know it's difficult to even begin to comprehend where these numbers kind of fit in, but they're really inexpensive to create, and they generate on the dollar that was put into them a lot of money back, because you'll get a lot of views off of a small investment that it takes to create these shows. Reality TV is by and large one of the cheapest ways to create content that there is. Scripted content, on the other hand, which is what we love, well, at least what I love, And it comes by the way of our series, like, Doom Patrol and all of the shows that actually we're going to talk about tonight. Scripted content is a lot more expensive to create. Game of Thrones and their new franchise kickoff with House Targaryen, that's massively expensive to put together. Sometimes these episodes take 1 million plus, or 2 million plus, or 3 million plus per episode. So if you only have 8 episodes, even in a season, you're still looking at 16 to 25, sometimes even more million per episode. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power is rumored to be one of the most expensive series content put together of all time. And saying that, it does kind of, to me, feel like, well, maybe they've got a point. There could be some good reasons for them to do this merger and try to recoup some money. But I want to put everything into sort of a perspective. HBO and Warner, in their Q2 earnings, they basically they the reason that they missed their mark is because instead of hitting, I believe it was 10.6 or 10.7 billion with a B dollars, their Q2, not Q1, not the whole year, Q2 earnings were only $10.2 billion. And so the reason that I bring this up is because it really puts into perspective for me the idea that content, especially scripted content, is such a huge and massive engine, and one that erodes quickly, sometimes right before our eyes. We saw it happening with Netflix. We are seeing it happen with HBO. It continually seems to, okay, good content generates lots of audience, lots of views, lots of market shares, and then the company takes off or the streaming platform takes off, and then there's this erosion again. It's like a constant cycle. What happens in this, and this is why I think it's important, is HBO and Time Warner, well, HBO and Warner, um, own the entire franchise of DC. They're not handling it very well. I feel like I should just say that out loud. There is a 10-year plan right now to handle the DC universe in a similar way that Marvel was handled over at Disney. Um, so far, I have not seen any of that plan. I have seen glimpses of what they plan to do, but they just axed Batgirl, right? uh I'm finding it difficult to understand how the DC universe continues forward when HBO is saying, well, we'll actually save money by not releasing this thing. We've spent $90 million in it, but we're going to save an additional 20 million if we don't release it. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's twisted, weird logic in here somewhere that I don't understand because I'm not an executive at HBO. I'm not an executive at Warner. I don't understand exactly what's happening there. But somehow, if we, the people who are consuming this content, are not vocal enough about what is happening to the content itself, I feel like we are doing a grave disservice to our ability to get more scripted content in the future. That is, if we cannot coalesce around the idea that scripted content is more important than unscripted content, that is, our reality shows. And hey, you can like your reality shows. There's nothing wrong with liking Housewives of Beverly Hills, of liking Survivor, of liking whatever the show is that you like. There's nothing wrong with that. But scripted content, the issue that I have with us not pushing hard enough for better scripted content is that we allow the streaming platforms to do exactly what they're doing right now, which is make these huge mergers and then strip all of the content out of it. That is a huge issue both for the future of storytelling in a visual media and also for our ability as the media consuming public to ask for other scripted content. And again, it's cyclical. I see this happen every so often. We were just talking the other day about a station, a cable station called WGN. And WGN started out with all these great ideas, and they came up with some amazing original content. I had a great time with WGN. I've also seen it happen with sci-fi. Sci-fi for a long time was grabbing and optioning scripts to make original movies. They were creating amazing series. It was fabulous to have to watch for a while. Same thing happened with AMC. Does everybody remember the moniker from AMC? Story matters here. That went by the wayside pretty quickly. And ratings giants like The Walking Dead just became sort of the legacy of the platform. And then we have all of these streaming platforms. So not only do we have AMC, but we have AMC Plus. Not only do we have a Paramount network, but we have Paramount Plus. We have Peacock. We have Peacock Plus. We have all of these specialized streaming platforms that are all putting out specialized content. And my concern is that if we are not paying attention to these huge mergers, that we are going to lose all of the amazing content, both that has already been put out there and that has the potential of coming down the pike. So that brings us to our topic of the night, which is amazing content coming soon. I by no means want to disenfranchise anyone and make them think that all the content that we're going to talk about tonight doesn't have a viable, awesome potential. Of course it does. But if we want to keep these shows going, we have to be very vocal as a community. So thank you so much for letting me rant. I just needed to get that out of the way. It's really driving me crazy that a company that makes $10.2 billion in a quarter cannot somehow get their own act together enough to say that a couple of series that are original content that cost less than $10 million to put together are somehow too heavy for the content channel to handle. It's just staggering in my brain. Okay, so maybe if I was making $1 billion a year, I would have a different opinion. I don't know. I'm going to introduce my guests, and I really am excited about talking about all of the things that are coming soon. I hope you guys learned something tonight. I know I did, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to start with Betty. Betty, how are you tonight? Betty, you are muted and cannot hear you. There you go.
It's like I'm on a Zoom call.
It's totally fine. I'm getting used to that, actually. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I just realized while you were talking that I had forgotten my dinner in the oven from like 2 hours ago.
So Betty is actually having her own reality series right now, which is the life and times of moving from place to place. I'm super excited to see how that pans out, Betty. Yes. I'm thinking it's going to be a ratings giant.
You're correct. I am in the middle of the woods, so all of these things are happening.
And Josh, how are you tonight?
I am amazing, as always.
Very good. Very good. Do you have anything to add about my Slate rant about Warner, HBO, Discovery Plus?
Well, I mean, as far as the why goes, I'm guessing it has a lot to do with the tax incentives for just writing it off as a failure. You remember the producers?
Yeah. Sadly.
Kind of the same thing, except for taxes.
I've even heard that float around as the actual proposed, this is why we're not going to do this. Does something similar, although not exactly the same, happened with the animated? They had a Scooby-Doo animation.
Yeah, the sequel to Scoob.
Yep. And it's done. I mean, it's basically in the can. And they scrapped it. And, one of the things, as we're talking about all the stuff that's coming soon, that is sort of like, this is why I get nervous, is because it doesn't feel anymore like just because something has been greenlit or announced that it necessarily is going to come to fruition. And that seems like really shaky ground to put your audience on, because then how do you deliver on any of these things? Like it feels weird. It just feels really weird to me. If I were to say,
I mean, from a business standpoint, you have your sunk cost. So I guess they also want to decide whether they should just take their losses and maybe lose more with adding money, or I don't know, the sunk cost.
okay, okay, and in a normal conversation, if we were talking about you and I having to sell our car because we just didn't have enough, even though we had just bought the car, and we were like, well, you know what? We're just going to take a little bit of a hit because we really need liquid capital, right? Got to pay those bills, and yeah, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a hit on it, but I'm going to go. But we're not talking about normal people. We are talking about a company that earned $10.2 billion in quarter 2 of 2022, and
Which is why I brought up this sunk cost thing, just because it's a business term, and they're probably more inclined to think about it. I don't think they're correct, but because I mean, any superhero movie or show with a female lead is better than none, even if it's bad, I guess. So
I also came across their graphic, which was really bizarre. They have HBO Max and then they have Discovery Plus. So these are the two brands that they are basically like merging together under one platform, but that they see as two separate entities. HBO Max starts out with the descriptors of this: male skew, scripted, leans in, appointment viewing, home of fandoms. Discovery Plus, female skew, unscripted, lean back, comfort viewing, and home of genre-doms. And when I think about those two, the way that they have divided them, it actually kind of makes me mad, because scripted content, and I guess I'm saying this because as a writer, it really bothers me that this is where we're at. We're already in this position where writers, especially for series, get the short end of almost every single stick. It's difficult, if not impossible at this point, to get something picked up by anyone unless you really have something in the pipe. It happens once in a blue moon, like Squid Games, or Sweet Tooth, which just happened to fall exactly in the right hands at exactly the right time. And yes, that can happen, but by and large, it doesn't. And so we have an entire industry of writers now who are scrambling for where are we putting content? And is the assurance of content being in production, is that actually an assurance? Because it doesn't feel like it at this point. It feels like, well, you could spend 4 years of your life building something in some kind of marketable content piece, and it could never make it at all. That's a lot.
But it's always been like that. Like, there are a lot of TV writers who've written entire shows, and then they're never picked up. And one writer was talking about it's just because they had too many female-driven series. It was like a really great show, and everyone loved it. But then there were too many female leads in the network programming, so they didn't air this one particular show.
I completely agree, and there are many arbitrary other reasons, like, everybody loves to pile on Netflix for never renewing past season 2, or, picking up something and it gets a fan base and then Netflix is like, nope, sorry. I mean, like, there are many reasons why.
Or replacing their actors so they don't have to pay them.
Right. And there's a million reasons why content doesn't either get picked up, renewed, or whatever. I'm totally aware of that. What I'm thinking, though, is that the stakes are extremely high for someone who spends 4+ years of their lives in content production on a single project, only to have that project completely dissolved and then basically it's kind of like the past 4 years of your life are completely erased, because who else is going to have viewed that content? Who else is going to be able to validate at all that even existed? It feels ghosting by the industry altogether to have that exist in any way, shape, or form without some kind of, which is why I have to say that I'm really glad for Twitter, because at least we get some sense of or at least I feel like there is some sense of outrage about all of this. So I do feel like we're moving in a good direction overall content wise. I mean, there is so much more content available now than there has ever been at any stage in our history, truly. But good content it's not a guarantee that just because good content is being made that it's actually going to be distributed. And with all of the mergers, it's getting harder and harder to figure out how to get good content to air, because you have all, like you said, you have all of these other now sort of I don't know, I don't want to call them dampeners, but they kind of are procedural issues that are going into, does this actually work? Do we have too many male sides? Do we have too many female sides? It's less about story and it's more about audience demographic, which is just, I mean, I know that's the way it needs to be. It just is very disheartening. Okay. So I'm going to start out and jump in at any time if there's something that you hear that sounds interesting. I'm going to talk about the first couple August. I guess I'll start with August. And I know there's actually one in here that Betty definitely wants to talk about. But I'm going to start out with one that already was distributed out into the ether, and that's Paper Girls. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to see Paper Girls, but I highly recommend it. I grew up reading the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. It was just my thing. I had volumes and volumes of them. And this is very much like a young detective show. It's amazing. The kids are fabulous, but more than that, the stakes are so high in this that it's hard not to get immediately enmeshed in it. So I had a chance to watch 4 of these episodes, really loved every single one of them. It's going in great directions. I really recommend it. And that's on Amazon Prime. I also had a chance to watch the first episode of Uncoupled with Neil Patrick Harris on Netflix. It is a rom-com that is absolutely spot on for Neil Patrick Harris. Perfect. The casting could not be better. And it's hilarious. It really is funny. I was so happy to see him back and not as the evil, maniacal Lemony Snicket villain, which he was also really good in. But anyway, that was also a really good one. On Friday, which is only one day away, and I'm counting the hours down, The Sandman starts. That's Neil Gaiman. Do you guys know The Sandman? Have you ever seen or heard of it?
Yes.
I saw the preview.
What did you think?
I actually thought it looked interesting. It looks a little scary, so we'll see. But I'll probably watch it.
It's definitely dark. I think that's a good way to. But I will say that if you like the kind of a grown-up idea of, and I'm by no means comparing these two, but if you liked Coraline and the kind of the dark feel of Coraline, that's it. That's the Neil Gaiman. That's his vein. You know, he does a really good job with the sort of dark, edgy stories, and that's definitely this one. I've been excited for this for months, if not, I think it was it was a while ago that they announced that this was coming. And they've changed a lot, which made fans both happy and not happy. And Neil Gaiman has really, he's interesting. On social media, Neil Gaiman is very interesting. He is trying to defend the changes that they made, but much like another show that I'm going to talk about, which is the Vampire Lestat, Interview with the Vampire. they've made changes that I think fans are going to have a hard time with, not because they don't like the content, but because sometimes changing the content just for the sake of changing the content to make it more present day or modern in appearance sometimes throws people off, especially when they're devoted fans. So there's that. Which is what they're doing, by the way, with Interview with the Vampire. Interview with the Vampire is being made into a series. And of course, it was being made at the time that Anne Rice died. Not a great, it just wasn't good all around. But they have changed up the story of Interview with a Vampire so much that even though it's essentially Interview with a Vampire, Louis and Lestat's backstory feels completely different. Like, not the same at all. It's kind of weird. Josh, did you watch any of Lock and Key?
I have not.
I'm surprised actually.
I have. It's really good.
Lock and Key, I agree.
I'm so excited for the new season, the last season, I guess.
Yep, season 3 is the final season. By design, by the way. It was always supposed to be 3 full seasons, and then that was the end, because there isn't actually an ending to this story. And I agree. I love Lock and Key. It actually is one of the most imaginative story ideas that I have seen in so long. Really takes you to amazing places. No pun intended, but truly, it really is amazing. Yeah, I love it. Disney's I Am Groot is also one of those sort of super awesome, catchy things that is coming. The voice of Groot is played by it's The Rock. It's The Rock, right?
Is it?
Yeah, doesn't he do Groot? I'm pretty sure he does. No? Who does the voice of Groot?
It's Vin Diesel.
Oh, it's Vin Diesel. You know what? I'm so sorry. Vin Diesel and The Rock. I'm so sorry. I confused you guys.
They were both in Fast and Furious together.
I am Groot.
And they're balls.
You know what? The thing is I confuse them all the time. I shouldn't. I should know that, The Rock is not Riddick at all, but I can't help it. For some reason I'm always transposing them. Okay, well, the I Am Groot series is an animated series. It's
non-canon.
Super. Yeah, it's non-canon. It's super cute though. It's really super cute. I feel like everybody would like that. It feels
non-canon.
It feels kind of like a Baby Yoda story. It's non-canon because there just isn't material in between Guardians of the Galaxy and the rest of the Marvel universe that kind of bridge that gap. So it's just non-canon for that reason. There just isn't anything in between there. So,
well, let me correct myself. I guess I should say it's not 616.
It's not 616.
The designation now for the mainstream MCU universe
is 616.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the universe that existed.
Right.
So this is a different universe.
According to multiverse rules, if it's not in the mainline universe, it's still connected. All you got to do is take a portal.
Okay, so technically, that could be true, and according to the multiverse rules of the universe, yes, I Am Groot could be completely outside of the universe that we're existing in right now, that we see everything transpire in, right? Unless it specifically says that it's happening outside of this universe, like Doctor Strange in the multiverse.
It seems strange to me that they would choose 616. Like, out of all the universes, we're looking at 616, not 616.
Well, that was the designation for the comic universe, also.
Correct. So it really goes back. It really goes back to the original writing. Well, yeah, I guess I could say that. But the reason that I Am Groot is not canon is because, unlike other things, they took a lot of liberties with Groot growing up. and it's really cute and it's really sweet, but it's definitely geared toward a younger audience set. It isn't geared toward the adult audience set. It's adorable and I love it, but yeah. Okay, so there's that. Which hold on a second. I'm going to contrast this. I'm going to contrast I Am Groot with Star Wars: The Bad Batch, because The Bad Batch just came back a couple months ago for another season, and according to the Star Wars universe, it is actually canon, which is weird. I don't understand how it's possible, but apparently that is a thing. So to me, it's kind of weird how all of these different ideas of spending time and effort in different places coalesce. With Star Wars, things don't digress off into different universes. They can't, because there's no mechanism for it. But in Marvel, we saw with Loki pretty specifically how these different multiverses work. And it was kind of like Loki was kind of like the blueprint for everyone to understand that the Marvel universe has more than one time slip. And so depending upon what you see and when you see it, that will sort of, you'll get content that either coalesces around the main stories or breaks off and does its own thing. Like WandaVision. They're all super interesting. Okay, so next one is A League of Their Own. And for this one, I am going to ask Betty to tell us all about A League of Their Own.
So, from what I'm gathering, it seems a lot like the movie, but none of the characters have the same names. So, basically, it's about women's baseball and what happened in the movie, but it's going to expand, which makes sense because they're going to have at least one black female, hopefully more, because they also, I guess, have to work in a factory to play baseball, according to the
at least for the one team.
Reviews. Okay, so the one team, yeah, so at least one team has to work in the factory to play. So we're gonna have a little Rosie the Riveter action. A dangerous job in the war, and I don't know. Part of me wonders if they're actually going to go and use some of the real stories, or at least like the real first team winning, and there's going to be more than one team. So I like that they're going to be focusing on more than one team. And I'm really excited for Darcy Arden, I think her name is.
Janet.
Arden. Yeah, she's Janet from
The Good Place.
Yes, thank you. From The Good Place. And she was actually my favorite character, so I'm actually really excited for her. And also, I have it on good authority that Rosie O'Donnell is in it for at least an episode. The Authority is her TikTok.
Nice.
So I think it's really going to show more of the there's also going to be lesbians in it. So it's going to be more
scandalous.
I know. But it's also going to be more realistic because if anybody ever saw the documentary, there's a cute documentary about lesbians in baseball who were basically life partners until they were I think died. So
wow.
And they met in baseball. So basically women's baseball, A League of Their Own, similar to the movie Running Towards the Train, but different characters, I think. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be some very familiar moments.
Yes, and Nick Offerman's going to be in it.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love Ron Swanson?
He's the Jimmy Dugan type, right? He's the coach.
Yeah, but his name is not Jimmy Dugan. It's Casey Dove.
Love how they make those arbitrary changes.
Casey, air quote, Dove. So I guess his nickname is Dove. But yeah, I guess it makes sense. He's a grumpy old man.
It does sound good. It sounds really good.
And I bet you he could yell, "There's no crying in baseball."
I guarantee you that's going to be said.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
That was a scene. Funny story. That was a scene that was actually cut from the script. It was in the original script. It was cut, and then Tom Hanks said it on while they were filming, And everyone was like, well, that line has to stay.
What are you
Because they were
doing?
like, it's
What are
funny.
you doing?
And the
Are
rest
you
is just
crying?
I have to say that is so iconic that that's actually what I put on the description for A League of Their Own. I put that the description was there's no crying in baseball.
there's no crying baseball. I hope they do the song.
And that is actually coming to Amazon Prime. So that should be an interesting one.
I'm more excited about that than anything.
I forgot that on Friday, along with Sandman, because I'm just so excited about Sandman, is also Hulu's Prey, Prey. And it is the sequel. No, I'm not. A sequel is wrong. It is the prequel to Predator. It is a story about predators coming to the Earth back in ancient days. My understanding is that it's Native American. I think they're Native American. And
The Predators are Native American?
no. But they come to the Earth during those days. Because one of the things about Predator, which has always been interesting to me, is that the predators have pretty much, because they have that technology that keeps them invisible. They make their presence known by all of these crazy things that happen whenever they visit any planet that they go to visit. And they visit these planets as hunting grounds. So they are the hunters, and they're always looking for trophies. And I've had lots of great discussions sci-fi wise about why do predators like the Earth so much, and it's because human beings tend to be really interesting prey animals. That is, they're cunning, they set traps of their own, they fight back, and so from a hunter's standpoint, the predators really have to outmatch humans, which clearly they do technology wise, but then there's this whole other aspect to it. It's actually, I really like it. I like the idea. I don't know if I'll like the series, but I do really like the idea, because I really feel like the Predator franchise has hit a weird wall where I know that they want to make more content about it, but where do you go from where they were? It's just, I mean, they've taken humans from other planets and put them on other planets. They have had aliens and predators fighting together against each other. They've had an alien predator hybrid baby. I mean, like, at one point, I don't want to say
Pest?
What's that?
Have you seen the movie The Pest? I think
No.
John Leguizamo that's his name, right, Josh?
Yeah, great opening number 2.
He's being hunted by he's a human being hunted by humans.
It's a comedic take on the most dangerous game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I feel like that's where Predator sort of shines, is in that sort of almost satirical kind of way. Although I will say, I think I am getting sort of ahead of myself, because Prey is actually not a series, it's a movie. But I just got so excited about it because I also heard that there was a Aliens movie. There was an Aliens series in development. I guess it's going to start shooting next year, hopefully. And that was really exciting, so I thought I would bring in.
But it's really, do we really want to see it if there's no Sigourney Weaver, though?
You know what? Actually, I do. I do, because I love. Maybe she'll make. Who knows? You never know. She could make a surprise appearance. But the aliens idea to me is actually more interesting than the Predator idea. I wish that if they get success out of this movie that is going straight to a streaming platform, that maybe they'll make something out of it. Like, it would be kind of cool to have a Predators anthology series or something like that. It might be kind of fun. Okay, so I digress. Anyway, okay, next one. I wish Tori was here, because I would love for her to talk about Tales of the Walking Dead. I personally feel like Tales of the Walking Dead is a little bit like trying to press all of the lifeblood out of The Walking Dead that they possibly can, and I feel like they're going to succeed because The Walking Dead is still a ratings monster for AMC, despite the fact that they lose, millions every time they air a new episode. It's still one of the most powerful franchises, basically, that's ever been created. It's pretty amazing. I hear that Tales of the Walking Dead is going to be an anthology series. So it's going to be basically like stories of Walker World, different settlements, different things, probably different points of view. I was thinking they would probably do something from the point of view of the walkers, just so that we get that idea too, but I haven't heard that specifically.
I kind of like this idea of The Walking Dead in like anthology series because I always wonder about all the people in the world, and so it's kind of interesting to get different perspectives on it.
Right, and we do know from the actual comic series, The Walking Dead, that different settlements handle things differently, different places. And there aren't the same infection rates everywhere. That is, that, some places have less people altogether. And so walkers tend to huddle together, they coalesce, they form mobs together. And when you have, these huge, vast areas of the United States without any population at all, people could do pretty good because you just don't it's few and far between. So you're not going to get the same number of infections. It's interesting. It's an interesting world to explore. So yeah, we'll hope.
It also makes you wonder why they don't go to the Midwest as opposed to like going to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we've always talked about that. We've always talked about, okay, well, just move to the middle of the Nevada desert. And yeah, it's going to be hot and hard and it's going to be difficult. But yeah, I can't imagine that the walkers are going to fare too well out there.
Yeah, like go to Oklahoma. At least you can grow stuff.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Okay, next one on our list. Oh, this one is awesome. She-Hulk Attorney at Law. This one is coming up on Disney Plus, and I have to say that when I first saw it, when I first saw the promo material, I was like, "What is going on with this?" But then I saw the actual trailers, and I was like, "Oh no, this is going to be good." One hallmark of She-Hulk Attorney at Law is apparently she breaks the fourth wall quite a bit, which is interesting because we haven't seen that in anything else except for Deadpool. But Deadpool makes it work really hilariously. So who knows? This could be fun.
But you also have Tatiana Maslany, who is from Orphan Black, and she's incredible. Like, I'm excited to see it just because I want to see her. Like,
I have a lot of high hopes for this. Yeah, I have a lot of high hopes for this.
Yeah, I feel like top tier.
I feel like this could be a nice bridge between the more, I'm not saying dumbed down, but the more formulaic kind of series that we're seeing out of the Star Wars universe with something a little bit more creative out of the Marvel universe, and also humorous.
Yeah, because like, and then from what I've heard from the comics, she goes into Hulk mode and stays in Hulk mode because she can control it, unlike her cousin
Banner.
So unlike Banner, she can control it, and she chooses to stay that way because she just likes it. And I think most of the characters who are superheroes at this moment, it's like they're fighting against it. They don't want to be these superheroes. And except for things like Miss Marvel, where she's a teenager, and Spider-Man, like, of course they're teenagers. They want to be superheroes and do really cool stuff. But I think
you know what? Think about the overall arc of that, which is basically a woman who takes power and keeps it. Yeah. I mean, like, that is it's a big, giant symbolism that is just sitting right in front of us. And that also, I think, helps the Marvel Universe at large to feel as if it is more inclusive than anything that DC has brought to the table at all. So
that's true.
Yeah. I have high hopes for this. I have very high hopes. Okay, next up is House of Dragons. This is the HBO Max, which we're seriously hoping actually happens. No, I'm sorry, it actually will happen. I know this one's actually coming to HBO Max. This is going to be enormous. Obviously, everyone who loved Game of Thrones is going to be super excited by this. It's supposed to take place, I believe, 200 years before the story that is Game of Thrones. So when Westeros was still a little bit young. I don't know, though. I think about where we were 200 years ago in this country, and I'm not super excited now. Anyway, there are apparently 8 different dragons in this one. So I'm sure that anyone who loves dragons like I do will tune in just for the dragons, and will get to see and hear about the Targaryens' rule of Westeros and how it how it began, but basically I think they're going to chronicle it to its terrible, terrible end, because we know that the Targaryen reign ended dramatically with a very mad ruler. There's lots of cool stuff that I think could happen here. Also, this series is very women heavy. There's a lot of women in central roles here, so that could also be, I think, pretty interesting.
All of those words that you said other than dragons was like, there's dragons.
Listen, I mean, I now I kind of wish that I'm showing my office, but my office is surrounded with dragon everything. I have a dragon clock, I have dragon wall art, I have a dragon bedspread, I have dragon pillowcases, everything dragon for me. So anything that even remotely touches on dragons, I'm like, yep, I'm right there. I don't care how bad it is, I'll watch it. Doesn't matter. Okay, so next on our list is, this one's actually kind of interesting. It's called Lost Ollie. It's an animated story about a lost plushie looking for its boy. One part Velveteen Rabbit, one part Toy Story. This is coming to Netflix. I think that this one actually has some really cool potential. I
love Velveteen Rabbit, so I'm all in now.
I'm not one of those adults who will not watch content just because it's made for kids. Sometimes I think some of the most serious stories that we could ever embrace come through children's stories, and I absolutely am right there for it. I also believe in understanding stories from that perspective so that you can help other people, including younger people, understand what the story is all about. I do feel like this could actually be pretty good. I don't know anything about the animation style. That's my only question mark. Is the animation style going to be that weird 3D animation stuff that I actually kind of hate? Or is it going to be more traditional animation, which I actually kind of like? So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. I hated, as I've already said before, most animated stuff as a kid, but I really loved the Velveteen Rabbit. So now you have me excited.
I'm glad. We'll have to see what you think about that.
Okay.
Okay, next one that's up is called The End Is Nigh. And I stuck this in here because I do feel like this could be a fun one. The End Is Nigh basically pulls together Bill Nye the Science Guy and Seth MacFarlane and the executive co-creator of Star Trek Enterprise, Brannon Braga.
So it's The End Is Nigh, Bill Nye. End is Bill Nye. Okay, because I was going straight for The End Is No.
No, it's kind of a play on words. The End Is Nigh. So, I mean, the way that I put this all together was it's a deep dive into surviving natural disasters, since we all seem hell-bent on creating them in the first place. That is honestly how I see this. The material from it is each episode takes a deep dive into a specific natural disaster and how we can prepare ourselves for them. Obviously, there will be a lot of heavy science and probably a lot of, hey, this is why science deniers should probably not be science deniers. So expect some of that.
So is this for kids or adults? Or
I
both?
think it's kind of for everybody. But I think it's actually it's created for adults.
Okay.
You know, it
So like a
especially
millennial thing because it's Bill Nye.
yes. I think that that's what they're really hitting for. They're hitting
Okay.
for the millennial market. Yes. It seems like it could be interesting though. I mean, you never know if you get Bill Nye and Seth MacFarlane together. Who knows what could happen? So it could be fun. That is coming. When is that one? That's August 25th. Um, okay, I'm gonna put one in here that I didn't put into our original list, but there is a show called Little Demon. It is an animated comedy. It is by no means for kids. Like seriously, it's not for kids. It is the it's the craziest idea. Um, there's a woman who is impregnated by the devil, and
Rosemary's Baby.
the kid, it's crazy. The kid is basically just trying to live a normal. I'm sorry. Well, they're both trying to live a normal life, but the kid is the Antichrist's daughter, basically. Um, Demons are not excited for this normalizing life kind of thing, because obviously they want to bring on the end of the world. And I, I don't know why this sounds so funny, but it just sounds super funny. So I'm going to throw that one in there. It,
What platform is that going to be on?
FX. Well, actually, it's FXX. So it's FX's streaming. It's their streaming platform.
That makes me sad. I don't have that one.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it pans out, then I'll see if it's actually as good as I think it might be, and if it is, then okay, maybe I'll keep FXX, and if it's not, then yeah, we'll see.
It sounds good. It sounds interesting.
It does sound interesting. I love those kind of dark comedy things, and also there's a voice of Danny DeVito in it, which makes me even more happy.
I love him so much.
August 30th is Andor. Now, okay, this one is a little bit odd. And I say odd because it's definitely going to be different. And I don't know, Josh, do you know a lot about this series? About Andor?
I know my mouse could probably use some new batteries, but I know nothing about Andor.
Okay. It's part of the Star Wars prequel, sequel, midquill series. It is about the exploits of Rogue One's Cassian Andor. And it's set to take place during the first 5 years of the rebellion against the Empire. Now, this series is an extremely dark, and it's billed as being an intense vision of the Star Wars universe. And I think that after watching the little bit of promo material that's out there, that it is going to handle and tackle some really darker themes than we have seen coming out of the Star Wars universe, which may seem surprising, but honestly, most of the stuff that we see coming out of Star Wars is relatively tame, even if it's kind of violent. The content and subject matter don't tend to deviate from some pretty tried and true tropes. It seems like Andor is going to grapple with some much darker material. So it could be a more grown-up idea that is not so much cute Mando and the child, not, the I don't want to call them whimsical because they're not whimsical, but they tend to end more upbeat with the other Star Wars prequels and associated material. I don't know. This could be interesting. I feel like anything that's in the Star Wars universe, I'll watch. And if it's dark, maybe I'll like it even more. Okay, so that is kind of it for August. I know there's stuff that I left out, and apologies if your favorite stuff isn't in there. I didn't put in this new series called The Patient, which is kind of like the Americans. Some stuff just feels like it's just old material being recycled, and I just didn't want to get into some of those. But I will start off with September, and September 2nd is the premiere of The Rings of Power. Obviously, I'm super excited about this one. Everything Lord of the Rings all the time is kind of my motto. I was just telling the story about how I went to the movie theater to see all of the extended editions of Lord of the Rings in the theater. It was a marathon session that lasted something like 15 hours. And I don't know if you've ever spent 15 hours in a movie theater, but believe me, it's an experience that is just incredible. And especially when you're surrounded by fans, because everybody knows the script, everybody knows the stories, and there's something dynamic about it. Anyway, it was really fun. I can't wait for this. This is, I think, going to be contentious because fandoms, like we were talking about before, are crazy contentious, but I really do like this. Do you guys know anything about this? Have you seen anything at all?
I've seen the trailer.
Are you interested at all?
No.
No? So I'm just going to be talking to
not
myself
because
about
it looks bad by any means, but you know, I've watched the Lord of the Rings. I tried watching the first Hobbit movie. I don't remember if I actually finished it.
I did not like the Hobbit movies.
It was confusing to me when they
Lord of the
announced
Rings.
a Hobbit trilogy, because I'm like, they took 3 long ass books and made 3 long ass movies, and now they want to make 3 long ass movies based on 1 little ass book.
It was not well done. It wasn't. I mean, I love the fact that the story is out there, and thank you, Peter Jackson, for putting it out there. But I was not really a big fan of those movies at all. In fact, I actually like the animated version of The Hobbit, which was like 1970 something or whatever. I could sit and watch that all day, and I know that even though not everything is in there, you'll get a better understanding of what The Hobbit was all about by watching the animated series or the animated movie than you would by watching that series of 3 movies, because that series of 3 movies threw in stuff that didn't exist, made mountains out of molehills. I mean, like, it was just all over the map. Not great. But I am excited about this because this is supposed to take place many years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy would have taken place. And it's, I mean, I want to say it's kind of like a backstory to Middle-earth's history. But I think it's a lot more than that. I mean, you'll recognize some characters because elves are so long-lived, so you'll recognize that there is a Galadriel, and you'll recognize that there will be some crossover that way. But the main ideas in these stories are Tolkien-esque enough that I think that they should be good. I don't know. I'm wary, but I'm excited. I guess that's the best way to say it. Next one up is, okay, this one is super interesting to me because I happened to see this movie when I was a kid, and I have no idea what the adults in the room were thinking letting me watch this. It's called American Gigolo. And so the movie was crazy, and boy, did I ever have questions that I was never going to get answers to, because
That's
I would never.
Richard Gere, right?
Yes.
Oh.
So that was one thing. So that's the movie, okay? But apparently what they're doing is making a series out of the American Gigolo series with Julian Kay getting out of jail and what happens to him after he gets out of jail. So that could definitely be a really good story. I put it in here because I feel like this has some story potential that especially people that remember that story will relate to. And I guess we'll just have to see what happens with it. But I do feel like it's got some pretty strong drama potential. of course, there is The Handmaid's Tale, which amazingly is season 5. That's going to be premiering on Hulu, and I think that, let's see, Handmaid's Tale is, what is Handmaid's Tale? Handmaid's Tale is September the 14th. So that
I'm so excited, but like
there's a lot that is going to need to happen this season because there's so much that sort of happened last season, which didn't have a lot of really good resolution. So there's gonna, I think it's gonna start off pretty fast and furious. Yeah, that's true.
I think I might have I might be traumatized more this season because now I'm in love with Yvonne Strahovski. So like watching her take the deep dive into villainhood, like I think it's going to happen.
Right.
It's going to be a little bit of a traumatic experience for me. At the same time, can we really have an adequate villain that is not another woman in that show?
No, and that's the problem, right? That definitely, I shouldn't say that's the problem, but I mean that's the conundrum.
Yeah, and it has to be. And I've wanted her so bad. Like I've wanted her character to like, because she's edged on the brink of becoming a decent human being.
Yep.
And then like all of these things happen, and then she goes right back into being a horrific human being. And like,
you know, I have to say that one of the reasons that Handmaid's Tale has been so fascinating to watch over the past 4 seasons so far is that despite the fact that it's dystopian, there's just enough of who we are, which is, you know, this is the way that dystopian fiction works, but there's so many correlations between who we really are and how we see these characters that gives us this feeling of like, oh, okay, well, we shouldn't have moral superiority over anyone in any dystopian world because look, you see, this is how we are, this is how they are. We are seriously merging into these lanes together. And it's been so interesting to see the kind of moral quandaries that happen in Handmaid's Tale and how we are handling them in present day. And it doesn't feel like we are so far away from each other. I mean, sure, there are some pieces that are different, but just from the overall sociological arc, wow, it makes it even more, it makes the stakes even higher, I think. And
yeah,
also,
I mean, anybody could be anything, and we don't know exactly how we'd handle a particular situation.
And also the production values in Handmaid's Tale are really solid. You know, it's not like it's $1 billion an episode kind of franchise, but the production values are excellent. They really go out of their way to make tones work, to make colors work, to make camera angles work in unconventional and truly different kinds of ways, which adds to the dystopian feel. So I have to give it a lot of technical credit. I really love this show a lot.
And like, honestly, the acting is one of my favorite parts. Like every time I watch that series, I'm always obsessed with. I become obsessed with Ann Dowd, who is Aunt Lydia, and once again Yvonne Strahovski. Like the villainous women, like are incredible because they have such like they're horrific, but they also have this vulnerability about them where you're like you're still hoping for them, like that they can be saved. And then of course we have the moral superior Elizabeth Moss. Like I feel like she's always like the moral center and everything.
Yes, I do too, because she plays it so well. She definitely does.
She does. She's incredible. Because you also like she still has her edges as well. Like she's the moral center, but she's also done some like there's some gray in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up on my list here is I'm hoping that this is going to turn out good. It hasn't so far. And I don't mean the series, I mean the story as an adaptation. Vampire Academy. Vampire Academy is one of those young adult book series that or books that stuck around my house forever. And of course, me being the weird mom that I was, I used to read all of my kids' young adult fiction too, just so that I have something to talk about with them at the dinner table. I really liked Vampire Academy. I thought it was great, actually. And the 2014 movie was really bad. Like, I don't know what got lost in translation, but it was so bad. However, they picked this up as an idea for Peacock. It is going to air September 15th, and this is going to follow two young women as they prepare to enter the Royal Vampire Society. I do, all of the right cards are being shown here, so maybe it's good. I don't know. I have limited hopes. That's on Peacock again. Okay, so next one. I'm gonna skip completely the Kardashians because I don't do that kind of TV here. But if you're interested, the Kardashians have another season coming up on Hulu. Ugh, I hate even saying that. Okay, I'm sure I'm gonna get hate mail out of that one.
I watched the one first. I would just watch the one season on Hulu. It's not good.
I just can't.
It's not good. But everyone is talking about how, like, I think Kylie in her private jet, like, she's what, 20, like in her early 20s, and she's a billionaire. Of course she's squandering her money in ruining the planet. She's like 20 and she's a billionaire. Like,
it's such an interesting take on society at large, and it kind of dovetails into what I was talking about before with reality TV. It doesn't cost very much money at all to produce these episodes. They are so super thin.
The only thing that is probably costs money is paying these people.
Yes, paying the people does cost money. Also, there is quite a bit of money that gets put into post editing. And right. I mean, there are some costs that are associated, but the costs are so small in comparison to paying writers, because most of it is scripted, unscripted, right? Like it is unscripted to a degree, but it is also scripted to a degree as well. So, it's not like we're just watching people in their everyday lives the way that we like to think that they are. However, I will say this. Reality TV, I know people that love reality TV because they find it to be, I guess I'm going to use the word kind of like their own little zen. It's something that they don't have to pay attention to. It's something that they get sort of like a drama feel out of, even though they don't want to necessarily follow a story. Or
I will say, when I was like really stressed out, I had a really stressful job and I did not want to think about anything, I would watch the Housewives shows. And I liked it at the time because I didn't have to think about anything. I would walk away and I would come back and you wouldn't lose anything because they're still talking about the same dramatic situation that happened. So I can say I don't watch them now because they actually bore me, which is a little interesting. So I do kind of, I understand that because that's why when I watch a reality show like that, it's because I don't want to think about anything. And you don't have
I also didn't put any crime procedurals on this list, even though there are quite a few that are either that have been renewed or are being debuted, because those are also not deep story pieces. They're crime procedurals. They they carry some bits of story over from episode to episode, but they're usually really small. That's actually something we're going to talk about in our episode that is called TV Now and Then. We're going to talk about what the dramatic sort of arc of TV storytelling, where it came from and how it has evolved and adapted now to streaming content providers in today's content media age. It's an interesting evolution. But crime procedurals, I also really didn't put on ours. Otherwise, they would have put on Alaska Daily or something like that. Oh, no, that's not true because Alaska Daily actually does have a plot to it. Okay, so next one up on my list is Reginald the Vampire. Reginald the Vampire is coming to Sci-Fi on October 5th. I have a lot of hope for this one. His name is Jacob Batalon, or Batalon. I'm sorry, Batalon. And he stars as Reginald. And this series is based on John Truant's book called Fat Vampire. It's actually a couple of books, I believe. It's a world where vampires are mostly beautiful, handsome, charismatic, gorgeous, and then there's Reginald. And Reginald basically has to navigate his way through the world. The whole series is comedy horror, and he's trying to avoid being killed by enemies that basically he didn't even know that he had. Mostly because he stands out as a different kind of vampire. Like, people think that he gives vampires a bad look. It's quite a social statement, to be honest. I really like it, and I feel like it's got a lot of good potential. So I'm looking forward to that one. Sci-Fi generally does those shows pretty well. I miss, by the way, People of Earth, which we'll talk about another time. Next one up on my list, which doesn't air until October 7th, which is killing me to wait for, is called The Midnight Club. The Midnight Club, this is one of the ones that I have been just jonesing to watch. It's Mike Flanagan. Do you guys know who Mike Flanagan is? No? Okay. Mike Flanagan did Hill House on Netflix, Haunting of Bly Manor, which
I love those.
Okay. He also did Midnight Mass, which is the last one that he did.
So he created them.
Yes. Bly Manor is the retelling of the Turn of the Screw, which is an amazing story.
And it was amazing.
Yes, very good story.
I was obsessed with those stories for a little while too because they were so well done.
Mike Flanagan also did Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange. What am I just saying? Mike Flanagan also did Doctor Sleep. I don't know why I said Doctor Strange.
Stephen King one, right?
Yes, okay. Yes. He also did a movie which I was obsessed with, and still am obsessed with, and that's how I got to know who Mike Flanagan was, called Oculus, which is the story about a mirror. And it is the best movie. It's so good. I absolutely love that movie. Anyway, he's got a great idea here. This particular story is about a group of people in hospice, and every night they tell a scary story to each other. And basically they're in hospice, right? I mean, they are really trying to keep themselves distracted. But the rub comes in when they vow to each other that whoever dies first will try to contact the others. It's a limited story series. It's not like super long. It's, I'm sure, going to be epic.
Is it part of the Haunting series?
It's not technically part of the Haunting series. No, this is definitely a different project. But
I want the actors to come back from that.
But if you know anything about how Mike Flanagan does storytelling, especially if you saw Midnight Mass, you'll be pleasantly surprised with Midnight Club. I think it's going to be absolutely one of those shows that people will, it'll air and people will go, oh my God, did you see this? And then people will watch it. That's usually how Mike Flanagan stuff starts. Okay, next up. This one is so interesting to me. It's called The Winchesters, prequel series to Supernatural. It's going to follow Sam and Dean's parents with narration by Jensen Ackles. I have no clue what they are going to discuss or how they're going to talk about the Supernatural universe altogether, whether some things are going to change. I don't know. But it's going to air on CW. I have not heard anything about anybody else making appearances. I don't know anything about like Cass coming back or anything like that. I just know it's going to be Sam and Dean's parents. We do know that Jeffrey Dean Morgan isn't associated with this, so I'm assuming that it'll be them much younger. So I'm sure that will be super fun. Let's see. Next on my list is Willow. Okay. So do you guys know anything about the Willow series coming up? No. Are you interested in the Willow series coming up?
I'd say I'm more interested in the Willow series than a Lord of the Rings series.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. Why do you think that's true?
Well, I assume the series is based off of the 80s movie.
Yes.
Which was around when I was a kid. So that little movie found its way into my heart way back in the day. Whereas I didn't get exposed to any Lord of the Rings stuff till I was basically an adult.
Okay.
So it doesn't have that nostalgic factor for me.
And see, I think the reason that I love Lord of the Rings so much is because I read it. I read The Hobbit when I was 7, I think. I read the first book of Lord of the Rings when I was 9, and then successively read the other 2 pretty quickly afterwards. And so for me, as a kid, reading the Lord of the Rings and then as an adult seeing the movies was that feeling that I think you're experiencing right now, which is like, okay, this is part of my childhood. And I read I definitely read the Lord of the Rings trilogy probably once every 2 years or so. I mean, like, I really, really like it. But Willow doesn't have as much history attached to it, but it's got a great, I think, group of writers around it. And from what I saw, I think the direction they're going to go in will be fun. It's Disney Plus, so definitely there will be some money that was put into it. The bits of behind the scenes stuff did look pretty interesting, and it does have Willow Ufgood in it, so he is definitely coming back to reprise his role. So it should be fun. I don't know. I like that world. I love the worlds of high fantasy. High fantasy is such a cool place to explore altogether. And there's just enough magic in Willow to make it interesting without being overwhelming. Like the whole world doesn't exist on magic, but there's enough of it in the world to make it an interesting place. So kind of like that. Next one is, and let's see, wait, let me give you the date on Willow. Let's see, Winchester's is October 11th. Willow is November 30th. Oh, wow, we made a big jump. Willow is November 30th, so we got a while for Willow. Also, I don't know if anybody is a fan of Yellowstone. That is coming back for a season 5. Interestingly, I've never really got into Yellowstone. I feel like it's a little bit older than I would find interesting, like for an older audience set, but I do know a lot of people that really love this. Kevin Costner is in it, and it feels like a saga story. It is a saga story that is, I don't know, there's interesting ideas in it, but I just can't get into it. I don't know. I just can't get into it. I'm sure it's interesting though. What else do we have? Okay, so that was November 30th. Next one. Okay. This one I also did not put into my list, but I'm going to put it in here. Dead Ringers. Do you guys know the story of Dead Ringers? Have you ever seen? Okay. Probably before your time. Man, you guys always make me feel so old. Jeez. Dead Ringers is a Jeremy Irons was starred in this movie called Dead Ringers, and it's a crazy idea of a doctor who, how much should I say before I give it away? Let's just say that he's a doctor who deals with in the original he deals with he's a gynecologist, and his whole idea of women is so odd and bizarre that it starts to take these very terrifying turns. They're twins, identical twins, and they sometimes take the place of each other, which leads to really weird things happening because one is a really good doctor and one is, let's just say, clearly not. In the series, it's a gender flip. So we have Rachel Weisz taking on the role of the Jeremy Irons characters, and um, it's very. Do you know who David Cronenberg is? Okay. Well, Josh shakes his head yes. So we know one person knows who David Cronenberg is. It's very David Cronenberg, right? Like it has that very Cronenberg feel to it. And Josh, what's a great David Cronenberg show to give to Betty so that she would know what we were talking about?
I don't know if there are any that there would be a cross reference for.
How about The Fly? Did you ever see The Fly? No. Videodrome?
Nope. Never
No.
even heard of that one. I've heard of The Fly, kind of.
Okay, well,
That it exists.
I guess the way that I would explain it is it's very reality bending. That is like it's reality, but it's terrifying reality. Videodrome is one of those movies that like sticks with you forever. Kind of sort of as The Fly. Yes, it's really happening, but wow, it's terrifying. So there's that. That I think that could be good. Okay, last one on my list here is before we move into Unknown, which is just sort of kind of a quick list. We have Doom Patrol season 4. Doom Patrol season 4 is set to hit HBO Max sometime in November. I want to say, probably the end of November. I would be thinking, maybe December. I don't know. Obviously, if you're a fan of Doom Patrol, you're gonna love this. If you're not a fan of Doom Patrol, seriously, go watch Doom Patrol. You'll love it. It's so funny. I love everything about it. We also have in the last part of this year, Gremlins: Secret of the Mogwai. This is going to be animated on HBO Max. I don't know what this is really going to be about, other than it's when he first comes into contact when the shop owner that we know sells Gizmo to and now I completely forgot his name, but when he gets sold, it's that encounter. It's the encounters that are like how he comes into possession of the Mogwai altogether. And I think it's in Shanghai, so it could kind of be interesting. We also have The Power. This one I actually thought about you, Betty, for. This is another awesome allegory story. The Power it's going to premiere on Amazon Prime. It's a composite story about women who develop an electrical current in their bodies, and it shifts, pun intended, society's power dynamic into something that we have never seen before, where basically like it upends the patriarchy, if you will. Not to say that that goes on without a fight, but I feel like this one actually has one of those like, okay, people are paying attention feel to it. It definitely is a twist on a superhero idea, because basically it gives most people this power. And I just feel like this could be super interesting. So keep your ears open for that one. I do kind of like the idea. And last one on my list is The Witcher. Season 3. Oh no, I'm sorry, not season 3. This is The Witcher: Blood Origin. Blood Origin is going to follow a totally different band of heroes a full 1,000 years before the events of The Witcher. It's right before the conjunction of the spheres. If you know Witcher lore, then you'll know what that is. And the conjunction of the spheres is what basically brought all the monsters and magical creatures to the continent. And then that subsequently was why they made the Witchers in the first place. Now, interestingly enough, Blood Origin, I think, is going to talk a lot more about chaos magic and what that actually is and how it's created. Because before the conjunction of the spheres, different people had access to chaos magic than humans. Humans did not have access to chaos magic the way that they did in the time before the conjunction of the spheres. So this could be really interesting from a mythical standpoint, just in terms of the backstory of The Witcher. I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. And one more, totally forgot this one, The Last of Us. I know I mentioned this before. The Last of Us is one of my most favorite games that is being made into a TV series. I don't know anything about the actual release date other than it's supposed to be late 2022. Maybe that means 2023. I'm not sure. Again, this one is coming to HBO. So based on recent events, that could really change. I'm totally not sure. But I feel like it's going to be great. It's going to star Pedro Pascal. So I'm excited about that one. So of all of the shows that I just mentioned, tell me which one you're the most excited for. Start with you, Josh.
Let's see. The most. I know it's easy for me to say something Marvel, it's right up my alley, right? But I am going to disappoint a lot of fans and irritate my sister a little bit by stealing what I know is her answer.
Oh, no.
A League of Their Own.
Okay, and why are you excited to see that in particular?
Well, I absolutely love and adore the movie. It's one of those annual watches for me. And, with 3 kids of my own, they still haven't been able to sit down and watch all of it because it's not as actiony as some of the other stuff from my childhood that I try to, force upon their geek influence. But it is a tremendously made movie.
Wow.
And if they can turn that, not necessarily that story, but just that era into a good ongoing series, basing it, I love the era also. I love it when studios, production companies really pull together the 40s with a bright color palette, and
yeah,
it's always fun to watch. But in particular, not even a big baseball fan, just it's seeing this particular story play out that I absolutely love and I want to see unfold in long form.
It does seem like there could be a lot of really good interpersonal dramas that happen that we didn't get to see in the movie, or that we only got to see very condensed in the movie, which do feel like they've got lots of potential. So
yeah, like at the end of the movie, they're like, here's the reunion, and then you get the the card at the end that's like, oh, by the way, it lasted a few more seasons, then it was canned.
right.
And, well, we just skipped all over all that, and you're saying Dottie Henson played one season, is the most influential player in this Hall of Fame when these ladies were playing for years, at least a few years. Okay, I want to see some of their stories.
Cool. Betty, you're on mute.
It's because she made it famous with her little shenanigans and her splits, and so, and who knows, they might have kept her name. Maybe they kept her picture around for a while.
That's the only picture anybody kept.
What did you say?
It's the only picture anybody kept because she was pretty.
Well, I mean, look at Rosie the Riveter. She wasn't actually a riveter, and she worked for a day. And she's so famous.
If I could I think one of the things that happened in the 20s and through the 40s is there was an iconic nature to certain images which sort of captured the imagination of the subsequent generations. It's not really whatever the backstory is behind the image, it's just the iconicness of the image itself that then spurred on those stories. So yeah, I think I can kind of understand that. What about you, Betty? Other than A League of Their Own, is there another one on the list that you are even remotely interested in?
This is what I have to say about that, Josh. Now that you mentioned the Mike Flanagan one, but I don't
Midnight.
really know. I just know that I like the other stories. I don't really know what happens. Like, that was my all-time favorite movie, Joshua, and you stole my TV show.
Well then, this would be more, wouldn't it?
So in the Midnight Club, just as a kind of
hospice.
Right, and as a kind of interesting take on it, Mike Flanagan does a really good job with his interpersonal stories, right? So most of Mike Flanagan's stuff is horror related, but it's not the horror that is the central catalyst. It's the relationships that people have with each other, and typically they're extremely dysfunctional, and that's what makes them so interesting.
And that's generally what the relationships in television and film, that's generally why I like something. Like everything I like, there's generally some kind of like relationship involved in. And even though it is horror, which I do not like, the writing is very clever, like, and it's very, very well done. Like, enough that I'll watch it.
I will say that, and I don't think I'm giving away any spoilers when I say this, because the Midnight Club actually comes from another source. Okay, so one of them does die. I mean, they're in hospice. One of them clearly dies. And when that one dies, really bizarre things begin to happen. And
I guess that's the catalyst, right? Though, like,
yeah, it's sort of the central. There's a lot of, from what I understand, there's a lot of lead up, which really gets us to know who the characters are and gives us a chance to really process their personalities and how they're reacting to things. What do you do in the face of death? You're going to die. How do you handle that? I mean, that in and of itself is rather existential and really, creates a lot of thinking points behind it. But then because somebody dies and they had already made this pact to communicate with each other after or if they move on, the idea that something is happening, it takes on both kind of a different sort of existential dread and a kind of terrifying reality that maybe what they thought was happening isn't really what's happening. I feel like if you liked Hill House, you'll like this for different reasons, but the tone feels very in line with it. So I hope that I seriously hope that you're going to like it. I feel like it's got some. Mike Flanagan does not disappoint. I would just suggest. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but if you want a really good Mike Flanagan show, Midnight Mass is as close to a masterclass in Mike Flanagan storytelling as there has been. It's so well done.
I started it.
Did you?
Yeah.
It is a little bit slow in the beginning, and I have a feeling that Midnight Mass will also. I'm sorry, the Midnight Club will also be a little bit slow in the beginning. It takes a little while to ramp up. Part of that is just characters, getting to know who the characters are, which he does really well. But I also think that this story is going to take off a little bit faster than Midnight Mass did. So, I am going to, man, there's so many good stories on this list, but I am even though I'm super excited about Lord of the Rings, I feel like that's sort of the easy go-to choice because yeah, that's just my jam. But the one that I think that I'm most interested in that like I don't know a ton about because I just haven't really been I haven't heard a ton about it is um House of Dragons. I mean, I know the story. I know Game of Thrones. I loved Game of Thrones until I didn't. But I haven't heard very much about this in terms of like whether is it good storytelling? Is it, what really is the story of the House Targaryen? Like, are they going to use all the stupid tropes that they used the last time? Or are they going to branch out and do something kind of different? I feel like they're going to do something different. I don't know why, but I also sort of love the idea of going back to Westeros because I spent 10 years of my life dedicated to watching that show, and so now like I feel like I have a place there. So I am kind of interested in that one, but the other one that I'm also equally as interested in is Andor. I really want to know what a dark Disney series would look like, and especially in the Star Wars universe, because I just feel like a lot of times in Star Wars we get very sanitized versions of stuff that obviously was horrifyingly terrible. I mean, the rebellion by itself it must have been terrible. It must have been really terrible. And we kind of get the sanitized versions of it, right? I mean, we hear things about it. Seeing Princess Leia's home world disappear in front of her eyes is terrifying, but it's done from afar. We don't ever revisit that. Nobody really talks about it again, except in sort of passing. And I just don't feel like it had the same kind of impact. So I'm kind of interested in that one. I'm surprised, Josh, that you didn't pick that one, actually. I always thought that you were, I don't know, not invested in Star Wars, but interested.
I mean, I watch them when they come out, Can't really say I go out. Like, it took me, I don't know, a couple months before I started watching Book of Boba Fett.
Well, you didn't really miss too much there.
But Star Wars is, I mean, it's on the list of things to watch, but it's not exactly day one stuff for me.
Is Mando?
No.
Really?
No. I'd probably watch it before the series ended. That way I could be caught up before the finale. But, as far as, appointment viewing, not so much.
I'm sorry, guys. I have to head out.
Oh, okay.
It's
head out.
Yeah.
Well, I personally feel like the Star Wars universe, in terms of new series, does a really good job of keeping the fandom engaged by creating all of these different spin-offs and different ideas. But I do worry that it comes too fast and too furious, and that eventually it's not that they will run out of content, it's that they'll run out of people being interested in the content, because it'll start feeling like it's rehashed. So I do sort of think about that stuff. Yeah.
I don't remember where it was I said it, but I think Star Wars in particular has a real problem with not managing its timeline, but it keeps wanting to put things in the middle.
Yeah.
And the thing that would get me to kind of tune in day one, it would be to add something towards the end. Start continuing the timeline, right? What happens after, Rey becomes, a Skywalker. What happens after that? Not necessarily what happens to her, but
Right.
just in general, how's the universe doing now that the Emperor's been taken care of again? Are there any more factions coming out of this new fallen empire? How does that story play out?
Yeah, that's I have to say that that's one of the reasons that I was kind of interested in the Obi-Wan story as a standalone story, because I felt like it was going to, and it did sort of, fill in a little bit of the gap between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and kind of what that looked like.
Yeah.
And I was not unhappy with that. They actually did a good job, I think, of creating a little story cushion so that it doesn't just feel like, okay, well, Anakin goes and becomes Darth Vader, and then sort
they
of
don't see each other again until the Death Star.
right, and then shock, all of a sudden they're on the Death Star having a battle to the end. It made it feel like the stakes were a little bit higher for that particular battle, so I did like it.
Did you like the news, or at least hear the news about Obi-Wan being bisexual?
I find myself less and less interested in. Okay, so to be totally clear, I honestly don't care. It didn't faze me in any way. I try very hard anymore to stay out of, and I think we talked about this in our toxic fandom episode. I try to stay out of the really divisive conversations that make me hate fandoms because the fans react in one way or another, because the content itself for me becomes so important. So I'll give you an example, right? At the end of, in the last 2 seasons, specifically 3 seasons for me, but 2 seasons I think for most fans of Game of Thrones, the story just started going downhill, right? I mean, that's the way that it felt to me and to the people that are inside of my circle. That's different than there's something wrong with Game of Thrones because X, Y, or Z, or the character didn't do this or whatever. That's what it feels like is happening with the Obi-Wan, with that piece, is like, well, how dare you say that the character has this part of who they are because it intrudes on who I thought they were. That's a different, it's a totally different way of thinking than I would even put myself in. I would never think about those kinds of things with Game of Thrones characters, with Lord of the Rings characters. I would certainly not like it if tomorrow the Lord of the Rings fandom said, okay, based on this new series, we now know that Frodo was bisexual. Because it doesn't.
I mean, we all knew that.
I mean, I feel like it doesn't matter. Like, okay, that you want to say that.
For a character you don't actually see with a romantic entanglement of any kind.
Exactly. And that's how I felt about Obi-Wan. Like, well, why are we even having this discussion? Are you saying that, like, that it is now somehow important? Because why was it important in the first place?
Is Obi-Wan season 2 going to have some sort of love interest? Is that?
I mean, okay, I'll be honest. At first, when I heard this, I thought that what they were saying was that Obi-Wan and Anakin were somehow entangled. And that to me just feels dumb. Like,
yeah,
that is just stupid. But secondly, and I would expect so much more from Star Wars, mostly because that kind of relationship just totally skews the mentor-mentee aspect of who these people are. But secondly, other than that, why does it matter? What else is there about this that could possibly play into the Star Wars universe?
I remember. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, since when have we ever been concerned about anybody's sexuality, including Han Solo and Leia, who have a kid together? I've never heard anyone be crazy up in arms that somehow they had some kind of relationship together. Never. And so for me, it's kind of like, yeah, this feels like a kind of righteous indignation totally out of place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna retread my brain thoughts for a second. First of all, I want to say, as far as the Obi-Wan situation is concerned, I read a comment. I wish I could attribute it to the author, but I don't remember who that was. But he made an interesting comment, maybe possibly fan theory, whatever you want to call it. But he said, if you think about it, all Jedi are bi, because only a Sith deals in absolutes.
I think I saw that, actually.
Which it was too funny not to repeat.
So I will throw on my Star Wars hat for just a second, and I will say that the lore of Star Wars really gets me into trouble with this, because Yoda has a huge, oh my God, I swear I don't actually mean to geek this hard out on this, but Yoda has some really interesting ideas about attachment, right? And how attachment is actually not good, or at least it's unbalanced, is the way that I understand it. And when I hear people talk about being bisexual or having any preference toward sexuality, it makes me immediately think back to the idea of, okay, there's an unbalance in this that just doesn't mesh properly. Being sexual is one thing. Being in love is another. And so how in the world can we possibly think of a fantasy universe that is somehow devoid of sexuality, where people fall in love and have kids, or fall in love and all of these crazy drama things happen, but somehow sexuality is mitigated to simply female and male, and especially in a universe with other subspecies, species of humanoid type beings that we clearly understand are interacting with human beings, that exist and coexist with them. And if you're telling me that none of those stories include love stories, which by proxy would probably include some kind of sexuality, I feel like you're being totally disingenuous to the Star Wars universe altogether. Part of the Star Wars universe is all of this coexisting behaviors with all of these myriad of species that exist across the universe, across the galaxy. Does that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. It's telling a grand story, and the thing is, especially with such big stories as galactic war, there's going to be elements of all walks of life that help put together an effort. So every once in a while you get to shine a spotlight on all sorts of different elements of what it takes to pull a rebellion together.
Right. And let's be honest, it's just our take, our gatekeeping, which I hate using that word, but honestly, it's just our sense of moral propriety or superiority about our own sexuality that keeps us from exploring the rest of the galaxy as it's been written. And that is actually a problem. Here we have all of the limits of this galaxy, or limitless galaxy, set out in front of us, and yet somehow we have to revert back to, there's only one way to do things, and that's it, and it's only the way that it's done on Earth, and it's only the way that it's done in this moral set, period. And then that's it. Everybody else in the whole galaxy according to all these other creatures, according to all these other different species of even humanoid, it just boggles my brain that somehow we would be so entitled and egotistical as to think that this is the only way that any of this stuff could happen. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, as a species, we can't even figure out the right way on our own planet.
Exactly. We can't even get upset. We can't even not be upset with each other for flying different flags. And somehow we're supposed to, yeah. I mean, it's so ludicrous. It's honestly just, in a fictional world, the fiction should take the lead, not your own sense of whatever it is that you think is right or wrong. I'm not saying that you should jump into. I read tons of stories about very crazy things. I never once have felt like I should go and do those crazy things. No one has ever made me feel like I should run off and, put a ring into a lava field or something.
Although out of the two of us, you have the most ability to do so.
I do have the closest proximity. Yes, I definitely do. But I've never felt even once like, oh my God, I need to be a hobbit and go do that. There's just, at some point, I feel like we have internalized this way too much. And Obi-Wan, definitely, that feels very much like it.
Okay,
so,
I have a quick tangent, real quick.
Go.
It's a business proposal for us. Okay. Secure a spot at the rim of a volcano, right? Or we don't have to own the spot, just have access to it, right? And then we'll have guided tours up to this spot, right? You with me so far?
Okay.
And it's marketed as I can't really use Lord of the Rings, right? But what was the name of the first movie? It doesn't matter.
The Fellowship?
Yeah, we called it like the Fellowship. The Fellowship hike, right?
The Fellowship tour.
But the point is, what you do is you take a bunch of people that have recently gotten divorced, and then they toss their rings into the volcano.
I see where this is going.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, first of all, we don't throw things into the volcano here because Madame Pele may or may not appreciate that. We just don't know. So, that's probably not a great idea. But secondly, while I really like this thematically, I would not trust based on the behavior of the tourists that I see here now, I would not be willing to take tourists within a league of a volcano, because they just simply don't behave well. So, yeah, no, I'm thinking
then take them up one at a time, and if they act up, just
listen. I have a better idea. Let's just say to everybody on the planet, if you have been recently divorced and would like to send us your gold rings, we will dispose of them into the lava for you. Now, what we do with them from there, let's just say that we, symbolically put them into lava and then just, melt them down and sell them as gold. I mean, we're actually doing a service, right?
I think that's fraud.
I think it is too, and I would never do that because that just sounds so terrible. The number of people in Hawaii who have tried to visit the volcano where active lava is, it's usually very difficult to get to, but with the recent eruption, it was a lot easier before things started to cool down again. And while there weren't a ton of mishaps, the amount of people that got called out to do rescues was just insane, because people just literally don't understand that, no, this is molten ground. This is rock. I mean, it feels so dumb to say, but it's like, you can't pick up molten rock. You can't do things with molten rock. You need to stay away from it.
It's not the ground is on fire. It's the ground is fire.
Fire. Yes. When you say the ground is lava and you make that a joke, that's exactly, you're referring to that exact kind of thing. It to me, it feels very like this should not need to be something that's said. Don't touch lava. That should just be a thing.
Although real lava would make the Netflix series The Floor is Lava much more enjoyable. Well, no, that's mean. Those poor little kids. I would feel terrible for them. I mean, they'd all go home with like half legs, and yeah, no, it would be pretty miserable. My honest feeling is the Lord of the Rings with Mount Doom and the volcano, that basically Sauron sort of tapped into, that the lava that ran under that. Remember that when the rings were being forged, they were forged in the heart of Mount Doom. So that lava has been running for millennia. Like, that's a long time. Mm-hmm.
So we're never going to even get close to that on this planet. Yeah, we can just pretend. I will tell you one funny story. I just told somebody this the other day. There used to be a museum over on the Big Island, and it was kind of like in the middle of nowhere. This big structure with, I think there were like 2 rangers that actually manned it. And inside of this structure, there were lava rocks that people had sent back to Hawaii because it's extremely bad luck to take any rocks from Hawaii.
I saw the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, that's like no kidding. So, but people still do it, and people send rocks back. And there is actually a priest and a priestess, I believe, over on the Big Island, over on the island of Hawaii, and that's basically their job. Their job is to re-bless the rocks and send them back to Pele. So, no kidding. That's an actual thing. So we could totally do something around that. We'll send people those rings and we'll have them re-bless them to Pele. Not quite as Hobbit-like, but still pretty cool.
I guess it'll be something we'll have to workshop.
I think if we're going to do something like that, we need to go to Iceland, because I'm not really sure that the Hawaiians would like Tolkien to appropriate their, appropriate anything really. But I feel like in Iceland it might work, and I know that there are active volcanoes in Iceland right now, so we could totally get on that. We'll definitely work that out. Josh, this has been super fun. I definitely want to thank you, and I also want to thank Betty, who had to leave early because the show ran super long. But it was a great conversation. Lots of good stuff that's coming soon. I am going to tell you that you can find me at moviesandmeals.com. And Josh, how can we find you on all your social media?
Well, the easiest way, I think, would just be to, honestly, you just do there we go. You look at that picture, take down notes, get a screenshot, widecomedia.com, thewadcast.com, Twitter @skidcomic, all of those websites and that Twitter, that's how you reach me. Look for me. I'm out there.
Awesome. And join Josh every Friday night for
The Wadcast.
The Wadcast.
Every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific over The Wadcast. Facebook.com/The Wadcast. And tomorrow night, we did it. We did it. Episode number 100.
Awesome. Very awesome. What's your topic for tomorrow night?
it's thought out and well planned, and definitely not going to be made up about 10 minutes before the show.
You're supposed to say top secret at that point. So yes, we will all tune in to find out what awesomeness episode 100 will reveal to us. I'm super excited about that too. Okay, well, have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for paying attention and listening to all of our coming soon ideas. Tell us what yours are too. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.